Ryan Russillo has briefly addressed the departure from the Ringer two different times. We're going to play two clips. What I want you to note is that neither time does Ryan mention Bill Simmons. This first clip is from the last podcast on the Ringer.
r@gmail.com. You know me, I get pretty emotional about this stuff, so I'll try to keep it together. It's the last show. I can't technically say where I'm going, I guess. I'm going to have an announcement today, but everybody already knows, but whatever. Just trying to follow the rules here. I think it's now safe to say something that we've known here for a while. Ceruti, Kyle are both coming with me on this new endeavor. So everything you've heard on the show, it's going to be.
One note for the audio only listeners, Ryan came across as quite pleased to announce that Kyle Crighton and Steve Ceruti would be joining him.
Basically be the same show. I don't see anything that would be different except for maybe a banner in the background, which I don't know that I always wanted because I like the waves as well. But I do want to thank the audience. And I know it goes without saying, but like none of this stuff happens without you and, leaving ESPN and feeling like you're kind of starting over and wondering, hey, am I ever going to be one of those guys? Am I ever going to be like one of those guys? Am I going to be somebody who's got enough juice to like figure out a way to carve out? Like I would look at the people I was friends with. I would look at the people that were older than me. Now I feel like I'm older than people, but that was definitely a time where I was like, I was just ready for a change. And it feels kind of cool now because I feel the exact same way. So thank you to the audience. Because again, none of this happens without you responding. So, whether it was stuff at ESPN and then cranking it up to another level, here was Spotify and Ringer. All right.
All right, so we have a jump cut now, and they go into this final life advice segment. Let's play one more clip. This is from Ryan's Instagram. Actually, correction. This is from the Barstool Sports Instagram.
Hey there. All right. So the new podcast starts November 3rd. We need you to subscribe to this new feed. None of that stuff is coming with me. So new feed, new YouTube page. So hopefully we can get the word out. The first episode, again, November 3rd. Ceruti's coming with me. Kyle's coming with me. Worked it out with those guys. Dave and I talked for 5 minutes. I wanted a partnership at this stage of my career. He was like, no problem. So here we go. Off and running. We'll do some NBA stuff on the YouTube page next week. So again, it's going to basically be the same show and maybe even a discussion on tile work.
All right, so one note to start is the restrictive nature that you can feel coming through. And it's very possible that this is just Spotify's corporate policy on, let's call it talent leaving the network. And so here we on this Barstool Sports post, we see that Spotify's not letting Ryan keep any of his IP. So that means he's going to lose his associated social channels along with his YouTube channel. And so he has to start over. This is definitely not something that can't be overcome because anybody that's interested in Ryan is going to pick up on his new podcast and they will follow it. It's going to take him several months to build back up that subscriber count. But this is really restrictive. And I mean, maybe it is just purely from Spotify, but if there's any part of this where Bill Simmons has a say, you would think after 6 years that you just let Ryan continue on with the channel, especially because what are you going to do with it? You're just going to delete it or whatever, sunset it, whatever. You're not going to do anything with it. So you're just making Ryan start over. I thought Ryan and Bill were good friends, but obviously something went very wrong here for you to have these two videos and Ryan not to make mention once of Bill Simmons. No, thank you. They spent so many hours together recording podcasts, and now everything has come apart to the point where not only is Ryan Russillo not mentioning Bill Simmons' name, I haven't heard anything from Bill Simmons either. So this is especially ironic given that we have Bill Simmons, the number one NBA podcaster, who talks about everyone else and he's the body language doctor. And now here we have a situation that is right at the Ringer network, right? This is happening at the Ringer and it's between Ryan and Bill and maybe Spotify, but there's no discussion here. So it's silence when it's you. When it's everyone else, you're willing to talk about it and explore. But here we can't even get the like a final send off. Ryan doesn't join Bill. Bill doesn't say anything about Ryan. Instead, we just have this somewhat awkward departure where we have the glaring omission of here from Ryan, Bill Simmons, and then from Bill Simmons, just not even acknowledging the fact that you have this major piece of the ringer, someone who's been there for a while, and he's going, and you're not even talking about it. You're not even going to say, "Hey, look, Ryan Russillo is going off and starting his own thing, and we wish him well." So we start with that. I've also got some notes here. Let's talk about this. So, of course, all that we can do because we have Ryan not really stating much. We can read between the lines and see what's not being talked about. But we also have Bill Simmons not talking about anything either. So we've got to semi wildly speculate as to what's going on here. Now, from Ryan's side, I completely agree with what he's doing. If you're not going to start your own company at this point, when are you going to start it? So I think this is the right move. I would be all for this. How can you hold it against someone who, as he said, is one, he's looking for a change, but two, he wants to see if he can make it on its own. I can't find a fault with that in any way. He finished his contract. He recorded podcasts until the very end. And so, what more, if I'm Bill Simmons, what more can I ask of Ryan? And how is it unfair that Ryan wants to start something on his own? Now, if there is a problem with him taking Steve Ceruti and Kyle Crichton with him, then I can see that. I can see that to a degree. But from my point of view, the way I'm going to look at this is one, great for Ryan. Two, if Kyle and Steve Ceruti want to leave, then leave. I don't want anybody to stay that doesn't want to be here, even if that may work against my interests initially, or maybe I'm disgruntled about it initially. Ultimately, this comes back to if someone doesn't want to be here, then I really don't want them here. And then secondarily, that's going to make me reflect and ask, well, why don't they want to be here? What is it? What is it that is so attractive to this new start versus the environment that they've been in? And so maybe there you get some feedback and you start to improve on what you have, or just think about what you could have done better or differently. So I don't see this really from Bill's side, and so if I'm going to assume that there's something very wrong, that there's just a very much a difference of opinion on what is the right course of action here, and that um, given the knowns, I'm not seeing it from Bill's side. I see it from Ryan's side, but if you're Bill and you're mad at Ryan, what exactly are you mad about? Is it that is it as simple as him taking Kyle Crichton and Steve Ceruti? Are they that big of a deal? I genuinely don't know. That's a question. Is it that big of a loss of talent that you can't recover from that? But if they leave, okay, they left, and we can bring in some new talented people. Maybe they're even better. Then it might be an inconvenience. It might set us back to a degree. But Ryan's got his company. We were friends. I thought they were friends. Ryan had been here for 6 years. That's a long time, especially in the stretch where Ryan was at the ringer. So from 44 to 50, Ryan was at the ringer. He was seemingly producing good content, and now he wants to start something on his own. I don't have a problem with that. Any way I'm looking at that, I just can't see. I'm all for people trying something if they want to try something. If this is something that Ryan wants to do, and he's fulfilled his obligations to me, then why would I want to hold him back? And we heard Ryan talk about see if he's got enough juice, ready for a change. That sounds like you should go ahead and start your own podcast and see how it works out, and just take the next step in your career. I don't see I don't see any reason to be mad at Ryan other than potentially taking the talent. But if they take the talent, okay, so what? We can go get new talent. We can go bring in some people who are excited to work at the Ringer and bring them on. So I don't see. I can understand Ryan as a loss of talent, but I don't understand like why this would be such a big deal that you have these two friends that were seemingly on the same page for so long, and now they're to the point where neither of them can acknowledge each other as Ryan is leaving. And it wouldn't have been that hard with this departure to just talk about it for a moment and then be done with it. So it could have been as easy as Bill on his podcast saying, "Yeah, like I saw the headlines. It's true. Ryan is going to start his own company. I wish him well. He's done a great job here, and so now we'll keep watch on him while he's starting the Ryan Russillo show." I also, if I'm Bill and I have influence with Spotify, I'm going to tell Spotify, hey, can we can he leave? Can he keep the IP? He's developed these channels. We're not going to do anything with them, and there'll be something that he can continue off of. I want him to be successful. He's done everything right for me, so there's no reason I would want to hold anything back from him. At least, I mean, that's just the way I'm thinking about it from the outside looking in. And then yeah, so otherwise on Ryan's end, again, I also don't see how it's so bad that even if you don't like what Bill Simmons, how this is ending with Bill Simmons currently, you can't also thank him for, let's say, the opportunity to start with the Ringer, for having all of these Sunday shows that they've done together. There has to be something that you can still appreciate about Bill, even if currently there's a disagreement on how this is going to end. So I don't I like it from Ryan's. I like the move from Ryan's. I want Ryan to succeed. That's the way I'm looking at this. And if I'm Bill Simmons, we've still got the Ringer. We've still got Zach Lowe. We've got a really good thing here. But I will say, to end this uh, more on a more broad point of view, if this is if this is something where you have a problem with Ryan and you notice yourself having problems with more and more people, I will bring back that when Zach Lowe joined the Ringer, I didn't get the sense of enthusiasm that I thought there would be. And I felt like I was happier for the acquisition of Zach than it came across from Bill and Zach. And if Bill if Bill has continual, let's call them disagreements or just conflict, something along those lines, if there's something wrong, or if there's just if there's not a synchronicity that's going along with some of these people where you think there would be, then if you're Bill Simmons, you have to ask yourself, okay, why is this the case? Why is there this constant friction with with the people I'm dealing with? And yeah, I just on the with the Zach Lowe acquisition, I did not. I felt like something was off, but outside looking in, maybe nothing was off at all. But there's definitely something off with the Ryan Russillo departure, and so I have to think we'll find out at least somewhat of what went wrong. But um, we'll see. We'll see if we get the full picture. So this podcast continues on, but I wanted to re-record the start because there were more thoughts I had on this. But we'll continue on with Pablo Torre and his coverage with the Clippers. So insert the jump clip right here. But that is not all we are going to talk about. I'm going to go to the big board. We started with Ryan Russillo leaving, no mention of Bill Simmons, but now let's get to the Clippers scandal. Can Pablo Torre carry this story by himself. And what I have here is he needs a new wave with differentiated evidence or a differentiated angle. Right now, if he goes on the same path, he just had Mark Cuban on the show today, but there really wasn't anything new. And I published a podcast on this, and I covered that Mark Cuban walked away with the win. The reason I say that is not because Mark Cuban had this evidence where he showed that it really was in doubt whether or not the Clippers circumvented the salary cap, but just that Mark really he came on there, confused the issue. Pablo was interrupting him. He didn't really. There wasn't really any way that he could go backwards, and Pablo Torre didn't advance anything. And so this latest episode wasn't one we didn't. Pablo didn't continue his momentum, so he needed to take one step forward, and he didn't take that one step forward. But what he did do was he alluded to more evidence, and he did allude to the fact that he may be able to seal Mark Cuban in and catch him in something else. I noticed towards the end of the podcast, he asked Mark multiple times if he had ever spoke with Dennis Wong. Dennis Wong being the 1% owner of the Clippers, with Steve Ballmer being the 99% owner. So that was interesting. So there's definitely more to come from Pablo, but as he continues to drip feed, if this drip feed is going to be successful, he's going to have to take it up a notch. So if he continues on the same path, it's just not going to it's not going to carry. He's not going to be able to carry the same story for months. So he needs to come with a differentiated angle or new evidence that really brings this story back to life. Because recently, in the last few weeks, we have seen the story start to fade, and you just don't see the same amount of interest that there was when this story was first going in the initial few weeks. So, continuing on with that, I have here, how much do people care? And one part of this is, how much do they care, because we're not seeing the interest from the other media outlets. And when I say that, let me show you what I mean. So we're going to go to YouTube, and here I've searched for Mark Cuban and Pablo Torre. So that's my search, or Pablo Torre, Mark Cuban. And we've got the search filter for today. And let's just look at who's actually covering this on YouTube. So we have Pablo Torre, we have the Dan Le Batard show, but of course Dan is associated with Pablo, and so he's going to cover this. Again, we have the Dan Le Batard show. We have myself, so I'm the fourth result. Then we have the Basketball Bulletin, and he actually talked about this for several minutes. So we have him. We have the New York Post Sports. So this is a short here of a minute and 33 seconds. Then we have a video that is not related on Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, another unrelated video, all basketball. Here we have another short from Pablo Torre, another short from Pablo Torre. And then we get to no results. My point here is that this really isn't being covered outside of the Dan Le Batard show and Pablo Torre and maybe a few others. So it really this extra story just isn't picking up traction. And without that traction, is this going to continue forward, or are people just going to start to lose interest? So let's actually look at the Google search results. And here I've got Mark Cuban Pablo. And so we see these latest videos from today. And again, this is from Pablo Torre Finds Out. Here we have the subreddit for the NBA. So the subreddit for the NBA did pick up several clips and post them. But this is from the users. So the users are obviously interested in the story, but not the mainstream media. Let's see. So we have Reddit again here. We have Yahoo Sports. And so here we have Yahoo Sports has covered this. And I think it's Tom Habestraw. He will cover this story. So Yahoo Sports involved here. Let's see. We have Ball is Life with a clip. The New York Times covers this, but they are associated with the Athletic, and the Athletic is connected to Pablo. We have Mark Cuban's Twitter. This is from 2 weeks ago. So again, we're not seeing a lot of coverage here from these other outside media outlets. So, Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated has covered this, but when I'm looking right now, I'm sorting by news. We have the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, Pablo Torre's Substack, Sports Illustrated, the New York Post. Let's see if this is recently. No, this is from a month ago. So this is showing my point. We have news results from a month ago, and we have a podcast that was released now over, I think, before it was like 15 hours ago, 16 hours ago. I don't know exactly when in the morning, if it was 5 a.m. again that Pablo released it, but it's just the coverage isn't here. So without more media pouring into this story, is it going to be able to carry for Pablo's drip feed and for people to maintain interest? Now, let's actually look. I haven't looked at this recently, but let's look at the numbers for the story itself. So it's published 19 hours ago, and looking at the video, welcome to Pablo Torre, we see that there are 4.7 thousand likes, 2,445 comments, and it's got 156,618 views in 21 hours. So there's definitely interest here, but beyond this group that is interested, how is this going to carry forward? And I think that's what Pablo is after here, is a continual drip feed. But is he going to be able to maintain interest in this drip feed? Because remember, originally we had we had the ESPN and all of these different media outlets covering this at the beginning when the story released. But now that that's over, now that the story is out there, and then we have the mainstream outlets no longer even mentioning it or making mention of it, how's the momentum going to play out here? And so that's why I say that Pablo needs more to go on besides just the continuum that he's on, because people are already aware of the continuum that he's on. I thought today's episode with Mark Cuban was going to reinvigorate the story, but again, it was like we had Mark in studio, so the makings were all there for something to be really, really, I don't know, I can't come up with the right word, but really significant. But it just didn't turn out that way. It turned out as more of an argument where Pablo was talking over Mark a lot of the time, and they were just going back and forth, and we didn't really have Pablo advancing. We saw Pablo leading up to more evidence being released, but we didn't see anything that substantive come out of this episode. So and I covered that in another video, and I said that Mark Cuban came out with the win, because it's not like he absolutely won. Like, oh, Mark Cuban showed that the Clippers didn't circumvent the salary cap. But Mark Cuban won in the sense that he went on the show, he was there to answer questions, he answered the questions to the best he could with Pablo talking over him at points. But he was there, and Pablo didn't introduce all that much that was new. He added some interesting. There was some interesting information at the end. He connected Mark Cuban to his name's Dennis Wong. That they were both on the same committees, associations, etc., for several different committees and associations. But I don't know what that's leading to. But the point is that this latest episode wasn't that much there. It wasn't something for people to go on. And so just the very fact that it was neutralizing in a sense, that Mark Cuban was able to put out some theories that could potentially be true, and just because Mark Cuban showed up and was is answering questions directly from Pablo, that's a win for Mark Cuban. There was nothing that Pablo came up with that made Mark Cuban look any worse than he had been. And in fact, it restored Cuban to a degree, because he was, previous to this, the last time I remember Mark Cuban talking about the Clipper scandal, he was coming across as completely nonsensical on Twitter. So this was very much a plus for Mark Cuban. Let's go back to the big board and go back with how much do people care? And so here I'm getting at, look, like with the NBA, do people really care? Like, this is obviously a story of interest, but is it going to change anybody's behavior? Is anybody going to act any different because now we have this Clipper scandal? What I'm getting at is, okay, I know that we have the Clipper scandal. I know that we've had Luka Doncic being traded to the Lakers for some reason. We have the Mavericks drafting Cooper Flag. But given all of this and given what I think about it, does it change anything that I'm going to do with the NBA? No, I'm still going to watch whatever games I was going to watch. I already have the thought that the NBA is that the NBA is I don't even know what to put here. That the NBA's conspiracy theories, most of them are true. I already think most of them are true. So that's not changing any way that I think about the NBA. From the frozen envelope to everything else, to the Lakers beating the Kings, to so many different things. Uh, to Tim Donaghy not being the rogue referee that he was made out to be, uh, to modern day where we have Luka Doncic. I look at my phone and I see that Bill Simmons has an emergency podcast, and I'm reading. I just gloss through it and I see the words, but I don't connect them. And I see Luka Doncic and the Lakers, but I don't actually think that Luka Doncic was traded to the Lakers, and then he was actually traded to the Lakers, to there to then where we're supposed to believe that the Mavericks just so happen to have that 2% chance come through and they get to draft Cooper Flag. And then now we have the Clipper scandal where nothing, there hasn't been a conclusion yet, but we can see where everyone, and I say everyone, I'm mostly referring to the mainstream media, where everyone is leaning towards. And you asking why are they leaning towards there? I already had this thought about the NBA. I already knew that there were things going on behind the scenes. So it's not going to change anything about the NBA. I'm still very interested in Victor Wembanyama. We're going to talk about him in a moment. But I'm still going to watch it just as I had. I'm still going to listen to Bill Simmons. I'm still going to see what Ryan Russillo and Zach Lowe have to say on occasion, maybe even Brian Windhorst. But the way I look at the NBA is not going to change. But what I do think will happen is this doesn't happen without consequence. So there's going to be an effect here, and it's not going to affect the NBA in terms of attention or even monetarily immediately. But you keep having this stuff happen, and it's going to result in a deterioration of the NBA brand. And by the way, the NBA brand has already deteriorated. We've seen that time and again. We've seen this happen. So now, when this story comes out, it's not like you have to convince anybody that there is foul play involved. People have already jumped to this conclusion. So the NBA is rigged, and the NBA conspiracy theories, you see that coming through over and over again on Reddit and on YouTube channels. The way people discuss the NBA, even the way former NBA players discuss the NBA on their podcasts. This is something that people are already saying. And if you keep going down this line and you lose legitimacy as a sport, then what are you really besides just like a sports entertainment? So you really become more of a WWE entity than you do an actual sports league. But that's where this is headed, and it just continues on this path. And the NBA is okay with going along with it. And one thing that we heard Bill Simmons and Charles Barkley say on a podcast, it's just the last podcast where Charles Barkley joined Bill Simmons. I think it was 1 or 2 months ago. They talked about the NBA getting this media rights deal and not caring about the fans because the media rights deal, I think it's for 7 years. It's either seven, I think it's a 7 year deal, and they don't really have a reason to care that much about the fans and what the fans think. And that's a bad problem when you start to lose incentive. What's also problematic is it appears as if the NBA wants to expand into Europe. So you can't really expand when you already have a problem with your existing product. And the NBA definitely has a problem with this existing product on multiple fronts. But this recent media money is also problematic because it gives the NBA the cushion to where they don't really need to care in the immediate term. So right now, the NBA can do whatever and just shrug everything off because they've already got the money for the next 7 years or however long it is since they signed the deal. So how much will people care? I don't think right now you're going to see much of effect for the 2025 season. It's going to be, yeah, the NBA is doing this, but so what? Continue on. I still want to watch the games. I still want to watch players, but in the back of people's minds, they will remember this was another thing where I didn't believe it when they came to this conclusion. We'll see what the conclusion is. The NBA's they've given themselves several months to figure this out, but it will be one other X factor here, though, is that Pablo isn't done. So, what information does Pablo have, and when he release it? That brings an air of mystery and an air of surprise to how this unfolds. And Pablo might just hold back some information until the NBA finally does decide on the come to a conclusion on what they're going to do with Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. So Pablo has played this right so far, and I'm interested to see how he wants to continue to play it. If he just wants to wait for the NBA to seal itself in on one position. I don't know where I heard it today, but I think that I read or watched somewhere that the NBA was waiting until after the season. They might wait until after the season, not just the All Star break, but after the season entirely. So um, it might be a long time before we get a conclusion. And the way that the interest is going to stay is if Pablo Torre has a way to spike that interest. But let's go ahead and continue on with the big board. And so we're going to actually look at basketball. And here I have Victor the Bully. So I'm watching him in the preseason, and he's he's actually bullying other players. He's not going to be able to do this with the bigger bodies. So when I say bigger bodies, I'm thinking of Nicola, I'm thinking of Alpi Shengun, I'm thinking of not Joel Embiid because he's probably not going to be playing, but the bigger NBA players, he's still going to have difficulty playing physically with them. But for other fours and threes who are slight and on Victor, they're going to have a real problem. And we also saw Victor in the Spurs intra team practice. He bullied Luke Cornett, and Luke Cornett is 7'1", I think 250 or 260. And if he's able to do this to Luke, and he's now unlocked this, this is a whole new level that he's unlocked that he wasn't using previously. When you watched him in his first two seasons, much more finesse going on. Definitely not coming right up to someone, shouldering them, and then going straight to the bucket. And now he's got that in his game. That is that is something that is going to cause a lot of people a lot of problems. And when I watched his latest dunk against the Pacers, it reminded me of Shaquille O'Neal, not just because he swung on the rim like Shaquille O'Neal used to do. Shaquille even has his silhouette dunking on his past shoes and other merchandise. But now Victor is he's got a it's not I wouldn't really describe it as a mean streak, but a bully streak, and he's going to that's going this is a completely different element that is going to change how everything happens with the Spurs. Now they're going to get baskets much easier. Now you have Victor being that much more aggressive. He's coming into this season completely different. And I know there are already a lot of people that are very high on Victor Wembanyama. I am even higher. And so with his MVP odds, let's actually look at them. So here we have the playoff picture, but what I want to get is to the MVP. Oh, here we go. So this is looking at DraftKings, and did I lose this? Did it refresh? Let's see. Let's go ahead and refresh the NBA odds. What's interesting is the MVP odds in different places show Victor as I think as high as 1,000 to 1, or not 1,000 to 1, as plus 10,000 and others have him at plus 15,000 or 1,500. So where is Victor here? Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, plus 1,500. That's, I mean, first of all, you've got technical value in the fact that other sports books have him at plus 1,000. But here, 15 to 1, this guy is poised to take over the league. There is a real chance that goes ahead and does this. He's the center of the Spurs. I will pick him to win the MVP of the league. I think he is going to. We're going to see that dramatic of a level up this season. And here we have the over unders. Looking at the Spurs over under, we have them at 44 and a half. I'm going over. I'm going to put them at 50 wins. And let's go ahead and look at the NBA standings. This is from last year. So here we have OKC at 68 and 14. That's going to come down. Then we have the Rockets at 52 and 30. So really not that, if you look at this, they're actually not that high. They're like right in the mix. They've only got two more wins than three teams that are tied for third. So here, the Rockets, I think, will still be strong, although they're missing Fred Van Fleet. But I think they'll still be at 50, 52, 55 wins. The Lakers are a question mark. We don't know that the Lakers are going to be good. That's not a to me that's not a given. I think the Lakers will be a playoff team with Luca alone. He can drag them to the playoffs. But remember, it's a lot of we just have a lot of parts and pieces with the Lakers. And with LeBron, he's already missing the start of the season. So the Lakers, to me, they cannot take for granted that they're actually going to be good enough to to get by in the regular season and make it to the playoffs. So I think the Lakers could come down a few wins, several wins. The Nuggets, they'll probably end up about 50 wins. Nikola can get them there by themselves. Last year we had the Clippers at 50 and 32. I think the Spurs are going to steal wins from here. The Timberwolves probably about the same because they have Anthony Edwards. So last year they were 49 and 33. They'd probably be somewhere around there. The Golden State Warriors, last year we had them at 48 and 34. Remember they had that surge at the end of the season. I don't know if this stays the same. And they had a surge. Yeah, like I think they had a surge at the end of the season. They brought on Jimmy Butler. I think that if I'm 99% sure I'm remembering this right. But either way, last year the Warriors ended up at 48 and 34. We could easily see that drop down. The Grizzlies, I can easily see this dropping down. And then the Kings here at 40 and 32. Maybe they're close to the same. I see the Dallas Mavericks. I would have to think the Dallas Mavericks are going to be better. Let's see, what is the Mavericks over under? Dallas Mavericks at 41 and a half. So I suppose this is going to depend partly on Kyrie, partly how D'Angelo Russell does. But he appears, Cooper Flag looks good so far. One thing I like about him is that he's committed. Like when someone's obsessive and they're committed, it's not, it's not like they're just talented, which he is, but he's obsessive, committed, really, he wants to do it. It's not like you have to convince him. It's not like he necessarily needs his talent to get by. He's going to be there just from his mentality. And that's something that I always like about players is when the mentality is there. It's another reason why I like Victor so much. The mentality is there. So for the Mavericks, I could see them going above this, but that's with the expectation Anthony Davis is out 20 games. I think if Anthony Davis plays 60 games at this point, it's a win for the team. But 41 and a half, I can see that going over. So I see the Mavericks going up. Let's go back to NBA standings. And then from there, we've got the Phoenix Suns. You can take some wins off the Phoenix Suns right here. What is their over under? Let's go back here. Let's go back to the over under. Phoenix Suns 32 and a half. Yeah, we could definitely take some wins off. I could see that going a lot worse. I could see that dropping into the 20s easily. Um, so what were they at? They were at 36 wins. So yeah, we'll take 5 wins easily off the Suns. The Trailblazers, I can see them better. It looks like Yang Hansen is going to be a decent center. That was a really good draft pick by the Blazers. And I know people said that they reached, but if you know you want someone and they're there, are you really going to try and play the value game where you wait for your later pick or you you trade up for in the 20s to try to get someone. Because what if someone else takes the player that you really want? So to me, I'm not going to wait around. If I see someone that I like, I'm going to draft them. Also, here you can potentially get the Chinese audience, which if I'm a team and looking at the business side of this, which I mean, it's hard to tell how many of them are actually concerned with the business rather than just their franchise valuation. But if I'm a team and I look at a Chinese player with upside who's a real prospect, I'm going for that player. You're going to bring in so much attention. So I thought it was a really good pick by the Trailblazers just for the fact that you know you want someone, there's the upside, there's the potential for billions of people to now become interested in your team and what's going on. I'm buying into that. So with the Blazers, I can see them going up, and I'm still waiting on Scoot Henderson. I think there's something there with Scoot Henderson. I think he's just going to take him time to develop, but I think there's something there. So I can see the Blazers actually going on the plus side. And then here you have the Spurs coming in at 34 and 48. Now, one thing I don't like about the Spurs is how inexperienced they are. So last year we saw some of this inexperience, but keep in mind last year we also saw an artificial suppression because Victor was out with the condition that is now he's now apparently cleared of. But Victor sat out for a large part of the season. We also had Mitch Johnson taking over for Greg Popovich, and Mitch Johnson did a mediocre job. And some at first I thought he was going to end up being one of the super coaches that just comes in. It's like when Mike McDaniel took over for the Dolphins, and he looked good right away, and it looked like there was going to be an element of that with Mitch Johnson at first, but then we started to see the losses come in, and you started to see his inexperience come into play. So with that, let's actually look at the Spurs roster, and the the leader here in terms of experience is going to be Harrison Barnes. He's 33. He's got the most experience. He's been a near star player, if not star player, at one point in his career. But from there, we're looking at Luke Cornett at 30. Bismack Biombo is 33 as well, but he's just not the he's not really a he's not going to be playing a lot, and so he's a role player. So he's not going to be the leader of the team like I think Harrison will, and then potentially Luke Cornett. Although I don't know if Luke fits into that mold, but those two are really the leaders here. Oh, and then Kelly Olynyk. I forgot about Kelly Olynyk. So Kelly being 34, but again, I don't know. I see Harrison Barnes as the leader. That's just to me. We saw that with him last season and Chris Paul with Chris Paul there. But here I'm thinking it's going to be uh, Harrison Barnes. Otherwise, I don't know where you're getting really that veteran knowledge being passed down and the guidance coming from any other player besides Harrison Barnes. Again, I don't know Kelly Olynyk that well. I do like the Olynyk pickup. So now that the Spurs are very strong at center, this was smart because what happened in Victor's rookie season and his sophomore season is uh, he was getting other centers were being very physical with him, and it definitely he was definitely struggling with that. So that was the one place where Victor really had a difficult time was down low, and I don't know why the Spurs had him playing center. I know why. Obviously, he's tall, but he doesn't have the body. So because he doesn't have the body, you saw things like Joel Embiid have that. What was it, a 70-point game? And Victor was there for a lot of that, but Victor, yes, he can block shots. Yes, he can play defense, but he doesn't have the body to match up with some of these large centers. Now he's going to with the added muscle he's bringing in from this offseason, he's going to fare a lot better, but he still doesn't have that body. When you're 7'5", you're giving up a lot of leverage. And so these other centers that are 7 foot, 6'10", they're going to be able to work him in, get position, and the Spurs just kept trotting him out there at center. But now we see that they're taking this serious. Now we've got Luke Cornett, we've got Kelly Olynyk, and we've got Bismack Biombo. So now Victor really doesn't have to play the center. I like this approach. We also have Carter Bryant, uh, only 19 years old, uh, really like the scouting report is that he's a really good defensive player. That's going to yield dividends for the Spurs. You've also got Jeremy Sohan out there, so I'm thinking Carter Bryant will be at the small forward. You've got maybe even power forward. He's 6'8", 220. Let's look at Jeremy Sohan, 6'8", 230. So yeah, power forward time for Carter Bryant as well as Jeremy Sohan. And then we've got Keldon Johnson at the three. So he's going to be a backup. We're going to see Keldon's just going to fit into the role, a role player at small forward, but he has the upside of coming in with a lot of energy, and at times he can play up to a star level. But then we've got the aces for the Spurs. So we've got Stephen Castle, we've got Dylan Harper, and then we've got De'Aaron Fox. That is a huge infusion of talent that has come really, really quickly. We saw De'Aaron Fox joining the Spurs last season, but he really was still working his way into the rotation. He did a decent job, but he's had the finger problem that should be solved by now. You've also got Stephen Castle. You've got Dylan Harper, who already looks ahead of his years. So this is a really, really strong Spurs team with a lot of potential. David Jones Garcia had a good showing in the summer league. I really like the Luke Cornett signing. There's a lot here, and then we have Julian Champagny. So Julian, if he's worked on his threes all off season, that shooting is going to be a real difference maker for the Spurs and helping them gain separation and pick up wins. So again, this team has so much talent and so much youth that they can really pick up some wins and pick up some wins on the fringes, in part because they're just so young. Like this, the schedule is not going to affect them the same way it is going to affect, let's say, the Nuggets or any other team that's older. But I've liked the Spurs for 2 years now. I've liked their chances for 2 years. The first year we saw the tanking, so that foiled that. The second year we saw Victor go out. We also saw Mitch Johnson come in. That obviously dented the Spurs' success in the second year. But here we have a prime season for the Spurs to break out. And so I've got the Spurs at 50 wins, and I am going to say that they go ahead and make it to the Western Conference Finals. And the one reason I say that, if we look back, let's go ahead and look back at the NBA standings. All right, so the OKC, they're going to be there, right? And I think the Nuggets also have a strong likelihood of being there as well. But the other teams, who knows? So the Timberwolves, they didn't. They actually, who was it? The Timberwolves played. Didn't they falter against the? Wasn't it the Warriors last year in the playoffs? And then here we have the Rockets. They fell to the Warriors, I think, in the first round. I want to make sure. Did the Timberwolves actually lose to the Warriors last year? Was that what happened? I'm just looking at the Timberwolves now. Let's see how they ended up. If I can even find this right away. It's not showing. Let's go to schedule and see if it shows. Yeah, I can look at last season on the schedule. So let's see, 24-25. And let's go to the postseason. So they beat the Lakers and then they advanced. Okay, so they made it all the way to OKC and then they quickly were dismissed by the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Timberwolves are a real team, but they're not going to get they're not going to get over that hump. Like OKC is too good for them. And so yes, the Timberwolves could give the Spurs trouble. Clearly they were able to. Oh, but remember against the Warriors, now I remember what I was thinking. The Warriors didn't have Steph Curry. So you have to ask, well, if the Warriors had Steph Curry, would this series have been different? Either way, the Timberwolves are a legitimate team and they could beat the Spurs, but I think the Spurs are right in the mix to also beat the Timberwolves. So let's go back. I've actually taken myself out of the standings. Let's go back. And if we go to the NBA standings, let's see. So we have the Timberwolves. We've got the Lakers. I just don't see the Lakers as being that strong. Luka's not going to be enough, and this team could easily go south this season. They could easily be struggling to make the playoffs. Um, OKC is still going to be strong. 60 wins is they're going to be right at 60 wins. Clippers, I can see them falling off. Warriors, they're not going. They can't. There's a ceiling on the Warriors that they're not going to be passed. But they could easily be a team that the Spurs run up against. I think the Rockets will be really strong with Garnett, not Kevin Durant. But there's a very clear path where the Spurs can advance to the Western Conference Finals. So that's where I have them. I have them at 50 wins. And let's go back. I've covered everything else, but I'm all in on the Spurs, and they will be. I will be interested in watching them. There are just too many interesting players, and I think they're going to be able to make De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper work. And in part because Dylan Harper has shown he comes across as he's really reasonable, and willing to buy in to what they're doing. And then so Stephen Castle will be the small forward. I know I talked about Keldon Johnson. He'll be the small forward at times. Stephen Castle, small forward. The nice part about him is you could play him at multiple positions. You could also play him at shooting guard. The Spurs aren't going to have a problem with point guard this season. That has been a huge problem for them as soon as last year and the year prior, no longer a problem. And so they've got the youth. The problem is they have the inexperience as well. And I'm really where I especially take points off of the Spurs is their head coach, because I saw Mitch Johnson look lost at times last year. When I'm watching the games, I'm just not seeing him adjust the way knowing Greg Popovich, knowing how uh, Pop would know exactly what to do at all times when he was actually coaching. You just didn't see that uh, the same adjustments being made by Mitch Johnson, but he's got another year, and now he's got this extremely talented team. There's just a lot here to like, and I am as high as can be on the Spurs. And I think with Victor and then so much talent being added around him, now Devin Vassell is really an afterthought. And if you have Devin Vassell as an afterthought, that's a really good place to be. Same with Jeremy Sohan. Now he can go back to playing his natural position. Now he can go back to playing in the post, and so he won't be relied upon as much. But Jeremy Sohan is a very much a Swiss Army knife who can do so many things. So we'll leave it here for this podcast, and we will pick up with the next in a few days.